Welcome back to another episode of Timebreaker podcast. I'm your host Daniel, joined by my guest Anthony,
And today we are going to be talking about Marvel Phases 1 through 3.
aka the Infinity Saga.
More like the Money Saga.
For real. So we're just gonna be going in, talking about a little bit of every movie in the Infinity Saga and kind of how we got into it, how they grew and how they evolved, and just how they kind of just changed the game for movies and superheroes in general.
I mean, yeah, especially if you look at pre-Marvel, but not Marvel cinematic movies, but we're talking just the Marvel movies. There's a huge difference in quality
Oh
between
yeah,
Iron Man and Hulk in 2003.
big yikes! Hulk 2003.
Come on, dude. I wanted
Yeah.
a comic book movie that looks like a comic book.
Hey, but I mean, it wasn't complete terrible. It wasn't completely terrible. We had Sam Raimi Spider Man. We had um, Batman Begins. There's some hits.
Yeah, but we also had Spider-Man 3
Yeah, it's X-Men 2.
and X-Men 3.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, anyway, moving on to our actual topic is talking about the MCU, and we're going to start going movie by movie, pretty much in order by release date. So our first topic is going to be Iron Man, released back in 2008.
Woo! Directed by Jon Favreau.
So Daniel, what was your experience with Iron Man?
To
When
be
was your
honest,
first?
I don't think I saw an MCU movie in the theater till Avengers. So I probably caught this movie when it came out on DVD, because I had it on DVD. So that was so I probably saw it several months after it was a thing. I liked it. It was Robert Downey Jr.'s. I thought he fit the role really well, and I don't think I saw him in anything ever before that. So I was like, oh, this dude's Iron Man, pretty dope, and yeah, and it was surprising, it was authentic, and it was still dark, cause when Obadiah's taking out his heart and stuff, that was pretty creepy for a kid. I was like, damn.
I mean, hey, it was creepier for me because I saw that in the theaters, and I was 8 years
Oh
old at the
yikes.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even recall seeing trailers for Iron Man. I
Yeah,
think
it
I
just
was
kind of came out
just,
of nowhere.
I think I was just taken to the theater because I was a kid. So my parents knew it was coming out, and I was just taken to the theater, and I walked out. I was like,
Just
hey, that was pretty
we're
good.
going.
You're right.
Yeah,
And
and
then,
this was early. I didn't even pay attention. Post credits, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know they were setting up anything. I was like, oh, it's just another superhero movie, because they were just kind of coming. There was a Spider-Man movie, there was a Hulk movie. I was like, oh, there's just another superhero movie.
right, when for you was the first time you saw the post credit scene for Iron Man?
Probably on YouTube, way later, when I was like,
Yeah,
oh, this is a thing.
I don't think I saw it until 2011. Someone had brought it up, and I finally put in my DVD copy, and I'm like, there's no way that there's something after the credits. And then I saw it, and I was like, oh, there
Yeah.
was.
I don't even think I saw any of the post credits until Avengers. I kind of just assumed oh, they all take place in the same universe and they're gonna mesh them together. I didn't know they were actually pushing for that within the movies themselves.
You know,
And
the
then
only one I think I saw in the theater prior to Avengers, saw the post credit scene, was actually Captain America: The First Avenger.
that
Like,
was with Loki, right? He's pops up.
well, oh yes, 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 yeah, that
Yeah.
was it. I kept thinking that the post credit scene was him waking up from the ice by.
That's what I thought too. It just makes sense that was a post credit scene, but I keep forgetting that's literally how the movie ends.
But I also think they had a teaser for Avengers at the end too.
Yeah, it's been so long, I don't even remember.
But yeah, Iron Man was seriously, it was so good, and it was one of my favorites.
Yeah,
As a kid.
and it's still to this day, it's stands out as one of the better MCU movies.
For me, it's definitely the best of the trilogy, and then I think it's definitely Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 and Iron Man,
100%.
Iron Man 3 is really good. I really enjoy
Yeah,
Iron Man
we're gonna
3.
talk about it later, but Iron Man 3 gets some hate that I don't think it
Oh,
deserves.
I can't wait to talk about Iron Man 3.
But
But
moving
moving
on,
on,
yeah,
we're going to talk about The Incredible Hulk. So this one I did see in theaters. This would have come out just a few days after my birthday, and my parents took me to see it.
nice.
And I remember always watching not the whole 2003 movie, but like I'd watch like just the Hulk sections of the 2003 movie. And like my favorite thing was watching him transform because like
Oh yeah,
my dad used to show me like the original series with Bill Bixby, and like I was always obsessed with like that transition into him being the Hulk and him just
right.
being on the destructive path. So like the 2008 film, it was fine. I enjoyed it as a
Yeah,
kid. Even now, it's fine.
yeah. I mean, I feel the same way. Like I know I've seen it. I literally don't remember seeing it, but and like because like the whole like whole concept is like pretty straightforward. So I really like. I recall some aspects of the 2003 one. I recall some aspects of like the 2008 one, and it's all just like a it's like a just a mixed up mess. And like at the end of the day, like it didn't really contribute a whole lot. Like you could go into Avengers fresh and not see the Hulk and still be like get the same out of it.
Right, and it was weirdly like a sequel to the 2003 Hulk, but it was also like a reboot, and it was kind of
It was
weird.
just weird, yeah.
But I mean, come on, we got that infamous end credit scene where Iron Man shows up and tries to recruit Hulk, which then played really no role in Avengers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the only MCU film that has come out that's like technically considered a box office bomb. But granted, it
Yeah.
was also not. I mean, this was pre even like the idea of Avengers. I mean,
Yeah, before it's
they'd
even like a thing.
set up the idea of an Avengers film, but I don't think they were moving full ahead in 2008, 5 years before it came out.
Right. I mean there might have been like some inner workings, but like at least to like our knowledge we didn't know. And then especially going into Thor, you could kind of see something was going on because like you went from regular man on the ground to space adventure, and it was really a big change for them. And again, I saw this one on DVD. I thought it was solid. You know, it's kind of mid tier, I'd say. You know, I definitely say it's better than most people say. A lot of people like crap on Thor, but I think it's okay. And it introduced us to Loki, which is one of the better characters in the MCU, and I think it's got some cool stuff in it.
For me, yeah, it definitely sits this like fairly a low point in the MCU. This was the only one to date I have not seen in theaters. Like, I knew what it was, but I didn't realize like there was any interconnectivity with this one, and I didn't see it in theaters. And but then I did see Captain America. But yeah, it's definitely like on the bottom of my list. It sets up Loki and stuff, but overall it was fairly generic, and I think that's why we consider it so low. But we actually did skip one. I know we wanted to skip it for a reason, but we got to go back to it. Iron Man 2.
Oh my god, yeah.
I just feel like going out of Iron Man into Iron Man 2, like it's definitely, I don't think it's a terrible film, but it's such a step down.
It really is. Like it's just it's not there. I mean, like it introduced Black Widow, even though you didn't know it was really Black Widow, unless you're like a comic book
They
fan.
introduced a very like sexualized Black
Yeah,
Widow compared to
I'm
what
sure
we
she didn't
got
like.
towards
I'm
the
sure she
end.
didn't like it compared to what she's doing now. Um, but yeah, and like it's. I mean, it's got some cool suit transformations, and I think you get more Nick Fury in this movie, so it kind of like builds that whole Avengers complex up. But other than that, it's a really forgettable movie.
Right, absolutely. And again, it's another one of those. I feel like the idea of Avengers had started to like come into creation, but like it wasn't fully there. So I feel like Marvel did have to do some backpedaling because of choices they made in some of the early Phase One films that going into later phases they tried to correct.
Yeah, I'm don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure they've retconned that little kid is Peter Parker in that movie, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't matter.
I mean, it doesn't matter, but I
Like,
mean,
cool.
it's kind of cool. Like it was a random kid, and now it's Peter Parker. Kind of
Yeah.
cool
I mean, yeah.
ish. Moving into now like mid 2011, so like we're a year out from Avengers. We got Captain America, the first Avenger.
Yeah. We know it's coming.
This was actually the first Marvel movie I saw at midnight.
Oh, wow.
I went and saw it at midnight, like sat in the front row because it
Oof.
was a packed showing, and my dad had taken me to it, and watched it with my head all like in a awkward position, staring up at the screen because I was 11 years old.
Yikes.
I don't know if it was the experience or the movie itself, but I walked out the first time not really enjoying the movie.
Yeah, I mean, like this one for me sits a little bit like kind of Thor too. Like it's just like it's for me it's the weakest for sure of the trilogy, and I think that everybody was gonna say that.
Oh,
And it's
absolutely.
just, I mean, it's necessary. It sets up some cool stuff. We got a cool Loki post credit scene, and I mean, it does good setup for Steve Rogers. I think Chris Evans is like a solid Captain America, and kind of like built for that role. And but it's just, I mean, it's a cool period piece too. But I mean, other than that, it's kind of forgettable too in my mind.
See, and for years I always sat there with the first Avenger being like, there's something I don't like about this movie, and I felt like there was something missing. And then it wasn't until Wonder Woman came out that I realized, oh, this is also a period piece, and they did it a lot better. Why? Because they actually like took it into the action, and I felt like they really like didn't focus on World War II in the first Avenger. Like it was like a
Yeah,
background.
yeah. It's more about like setting him up and like what action there is. It's really montagey.
Yeah, yeah for me it the same as Thor and Iron Man 2. It sits at the bottom of my list only because so much better films have come out.
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind. Like looking back, like we were like all these Phase One movies kind of suck compared to the rest, but at the time they were good enough and they were really solid enough to propel them to keep making movies up to like Avengers and stuff. So it's kind of a miracle that this happened.
Well, nowadays you kind of look at it and I feel like really, I mean, granted Disney bought Marvel in 2009, but I feel like Avengers was a gamble. Like it was
Oh,
a
for sure.
$200 million investment that up to that point, the highest grossing MCU movie was Iron Man in the 500 millions. Oh, my bad. And Iron Man 2 had made 600.
Yeah.
Like, so I guarantee they went in expecting, okay, we might hit $900 billion. And then Avengers just blew up and it made over $1.5 billion. It was like the third highest grossing movie at the time.
Yep.
I saw it opening day. I did not go and see it at midnight.
I don't think I, s- I don't think I saw it opening day. I don't even know if I saw it on opening weekend. To be honest, like my family was really like didn't like the whole crowds and little kids and stuff in the theater, so we like would wait, a weekend or so until we saw it. But we did see it in the theaters. This was the first MCU movie I saw in the theaters, and it was kind of crazy. I remember seeing like the trailers and being like, "Whoa, this is gonna be something legit." Like they're going all in for this one.
See, for me, I saw the trailers for Avengers and had no idea what it was because I had not seen Thor. I'd only seen Captain America. So I'm like, oh, look, Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk. Oh, yeah, I know who they are. Who's this guy with blonde hair?
Who's the bad guy? Yeah,
Yeah, literally. But then I watched like Thor like 2 months before it came out. I'm like, oh, everything makes
uh,
sense now.
yeah. But I mean,
um,
like
my
Avengers changed
to be
changed the
honest,
game.
my first experience watching the movie was terrible. I had some like
Really?
obnoxious
Uh,
like 15-year-old just like clapping every time something happened. But like this was before clapping in a Marvel movie was normal, so like everyone was just like straight
yeah.
up shut up. Like one person sitting next to me straight up turned around and was like shut up or I'm gonna freaking move you. And
Yeah.
like 5 minutes later he clapped again and the mom just like climbed over the seat and told him to
No
get up and
way.
move. And I was like, great, now I have to sit next to this guy.
Yeah. Imagine like during like the team up shot in Avengers, you're like cheering and everybody's telling you to shut up.
I mean, it just wasn't.
It just wasn't a thing.
This was, I feel like, the first example of an event film,
Yes.
and up to that point, I don't think like, yeah, we had Avatar, but I don't like it was
It didn't have the
different.
backing or the hype behind it yet.
Don't get no. Okay, so Avatar had backing, but it was a different reason for it. It wasn't like
It wasn't
and
for. It was more like immersive, not for you to like hype everybody up.
Avatar was hyped for its 3D, where Avengers was hyped up because it was something that at the time we had never seen before.
Exactly.
Like an assembled like superhero movie like you have been saying we saw we saw Spider-Man like X-Men but like we never seen 5 of the
Something on this
movies come
scale.
before it,
Yeah.
right? And then combined to create one movie. Like, it was just unprecedented.
Yeah. And I think most people would have this like towards the top of their list. Low key for me, it's kind of not aged very well.
Well, I think it sits in the same realm as those first. It's just the whole first phase, like
Yeah.
so, like
Like outside of
it.
Iron Man,
It got
just
created in such a way where I feel like yes, it did what it needed to in 2012, but nowadays, like it's definitely feels generic,
yeah, and just the bar is set so much higher now. Which
and that's
speak
okay.
yeah,
Like,
and I mean like speaking of like setting the bar high, talk about Iron Man 3 coming right after Avengers.
okay, I loved Iron Man 3. Like, I know
Same.
so many people hate Iron Man 3.
People really took the Mandarin thing like to heart. Like I didn't really care. I maybe because I didn't like follow the comics, but people like use that as an excuse to like really hate this movie.
Well, and nowadays, like Shane Black, like
Oh yeah,
excellent director. Like,
Nice
Predator's like
Guys,
his one downfall, but Nice Guys was so
Chef's
good.
Kiss.
But yeah, like going into Iron Man 3 after Avengers, like everyone was so hyped.
Yeah,
And then I think just again, you had people who read the comics who like the Mandarin twist was like an insult, but like for me and you, like we didn't read the comics, so like
right.
we were there for an entertaining movie, and that's exactly what we got.
And then another thing too with Iron Man 3 that I feel like a lot of people kind of bag on it for is it's kind of in a way like Dark Knight Rises where it's more of a Tony Stark movie than it is an Iron Man movie.
Right, and it
And
kind
people
of
didn't really like that, but I
has
didn't really mind that because I love Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
right, and yeah, that was also the other complaint that movie had was there's not enough Iron Man, but like the whole point of the movie was what do you do when you take his suit away,
Yeah, he
and
is
like
Iron Man.
it
That's
was a
the point.
point that tried to be made in Avengers because Steve Rogers asked him take the suit of armor off. What are you like?
Yeah,
This movie really like examined what it would be like if he didn't have his suit because they literally stripped him of his suits.
yeah. And then they literally gave us Iron Man porn at the end, and people didn't think that was enough. Like,
You have to elaborate more.
dude, there's so many Iron Men at the end of that movie.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I was like, what are you referencing here?
No, not that kind of Iron Man porn.
Dude, I love the Mandarin twist. Like, he's just like, I'm
Yeah,
Trevor.
yeah. He's like, I'm an actor. I thought it was like, oh,
Yeah, dude, I loved it. And even now, like, I can go back and watch that movie. I'll be like, this is a good time.
yeah. But I mean, for like Marvel as a whole, like this was low key kind of rough because people didn't like Iron Man 3, and then they sure as hell did not like the movie that came after Iron Man 3.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so moving into the next movie, Thor: The Dark World. All right, wasn't a huge fan of Thor. So for me, Dark World is a step up because I really I
Yeah.
really didn't like the first one. So like for me, I was like, yep, there's more action in this one. I still think it sucks, but hey, there's more action.
I mean, for me, Thor: The Dark World is in a weird spot because like it's kind of interchangeable with the first Thor for me. I'd argue it kind of contributes more to the MCU as a whole because it was like another MCU movie about like an Infinity Stone, and I think the Loki stuff in this movie is better, and I'm all about that. So, didn't absolutely hate it, but wasn't like blown away by it at the same time.
No, yeah, I definitely wasn't blown away with it. For me, I personally thought it was better than the first one, but I've never rewatched the first or second movie, so
Oh yeah,
my opinion could be absolutely just wrong right now. Um,
here's how it is.
One of the things I liked about the second movie, at least for your first watch through, was like watching Loki die and stuff. Like those scenes, at least at the time, like you were like, wow, they really just killed him, and it was
Yeah, I was
intense.
like, damn, he's dead. So
And
you
they had
watched
the
the end of the
little
movie.
right, and then they had the little Steve Rogers cameo where he turned into him, and I thought
Yeah,
that was
that was fun.
cool. But
And then they
yeah,
kind of left you like wanting like answers because then they did the whole thing at the end, and you're like, what the heck happened to Odin?
right, and then you had to wait 4 years for it.
That's not important.
So then moving on to the next movie in Phase 2 was Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Holy smokes! Do I have a theater story for this one?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Yeah.
please.
So I saw the trailers, right? I this Winter Soldier figure, totally. I did not read the comics, did not know what was coming, right? I heard some whispers. You're like, yo, it's gonna be Bucky, and I was like, no, that dude's dead. All right, but I did not take it the same way this guy in the theater took it. Man, when they're in that fight in the street brawling it out, the face mask comes out and he's like, Bucky. This man in my audience said, what? That was so funny. The entire theater laughed. I mean, because we all had that same reaction, but like he was actually the guy that went far enough to like say it, you know?
Dude, nothing will beat having like these experiences in the theaters, just having a random dude not understanding anything and then
Yeah,
getting his mind blown.
yeah, exactly. But talk about a step up. Like this.
Oh yeah,
Woo.
absolutely. Like I walked out of Winter Soldier just shocked. I'm like, what did I just watch?
Yeah,
And on
yeah.
top of
They
that,
completely flipped the script and changed the genre, and the action was way better. Oh
well
my gosh.
again, unlike Thor: The Dark World, this one I felt really had an impact on the MCU because of the fall of Shield in this movie and like
Yes.
comparing the two movies, like this was the first Phase 2 movie that I really felt shook things up.
Yeah, and then also like it introduced some nice, cool characters. I feel like Black Widow fits in this movie better than she does in Iron Man 2 because I just like her and Captain America as a better duo. And then we introduced Falcon and Crossbones and just a lot of cool tiny things. They even mentioned Doctor Strange's name, which you're like, whoa.
Right, and I feel like this also is one of the first examples of like this is pre Phase 3, and while I really like Phase 3 is great, it
Yeah,
definitely you have to sideline a lot of things in order to create this like entangled universe, and I feel
right.
like Crossbones definitely gets the bad section of this where like he
Yeah,
was a really vital part of Winter Soldier, but then he was just given the sideline in Civil War.
yeah.
And then, let's talk about surprises in Phase 2. Guardians of the Galaxy was an absolute shock.
Holy smokes, what a delight. I don't.
like
I haven't been so satisfied in a movie in a really long time.
like not only did I have no idea what I was getting into, but
Zero expectations.
walked out of it just going, "Whoa." Like
Disney made everybody love a tree and a raccoon for ages. Like,
honestly.
what?
So the significance for me of Guardians of the Galaxy is not only was this was my favorite Marvel movie at the time. Like Avengers
Oh,
was out,
same.
Iron Man was out, like everything was
This
out.
was my
Like
favorite.
Guardians of the Galaxy was top of the list. And not only that, but I had the pleasure of watching this movie opening night in IMAX, and this was my first MCU IMAX movie.
Ooh,
And this movie took advantage of the IMAX screens, which I was not expecting. And so it was amazing to
yeah.
say the least.
S tier movie for sure. Like,
And this was something that Marvel then started to incorporate in select movies until like the back end of Phase 3, where some MCU movies were getting IMAX sequences, and Guardians of the Galaxy to this day has some of the best use of it outside of obviously Avengers Infinity War and Endgame.
right. Yeah, and I felt like it was just like a solid. It was different. It was cool. It was like a space. It felt like kind of like a Star Wars movie, honestly. Just like going on a space adventure, with all these brand new characters I didn't know, but I kept fell in love with all of them. Really cool stuff, and introduced another Infinity Stone, and we got a little bit more of the mythology behind them, which kind of expanded the whole universe as a whole.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Chris Pratt was just outstanding, and
Yeah.
so was Bradley Cooper, and
Yep.
I
All of
mean,
them.
yeah, like it was like Avengers, but like not Avengers.
Yeah. They're like the space Avengers.
The B team that
Yeah.
really took the A on on the
Right.
movie.
Exactly.
And I thought it was just really ironic that this was the movie we got before Avengers Age of Ultron came out. And
Right.
at the time of Guardians coming out, I was like I just didn't feel like Phase 2 had really gone anywhere. And I feel like they definitely fixed this in Phase 3, but like as an overall arc, I didn't feel like there was a lot of like world like the MCU world was really not impacted by any film outside of Winter Soldier.
Right. But I mean, like the whole cosmic world we got Dark World and in Guardians for the Infinity Saga.
Right.
And then also we got more Thanos, where he's like actually talking in Guardians, and then he's got that end cameo in Ultron. So I feel like it's like the threat is creeping closer and closer.
Right, and so I feel like Age of Ultron is just such it got like it got such a bad area of what it needed to be. Like it was
Yeah, it was
a
kind of
sequel
set up
to
to fail.
Avengers, but it also I feel was in production so soon that they were like, you know what, forget it. We're not really incorporating anything from Phase 2 because not much happened. And
Yeah.
so instead we ended up having a lot of Phase 2 be a build up for Phase 3, which then just in the long run made Phase 3 just better.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, Ultron had a lot to do. Like, Ultron had to be a worthy successor to Avengers 1. Good luck. And half that movie is just setting up solo movies in Phase 3, which doesn't help it at all.
And I think a lot of people give it a lot of bad
Yeah,
talk.
I don't think it's as worse as people say, dude. There's a lot of cool stuff in Ultron.
I personally enjoy it more than the first Avengers nowadays.
No,
Like
yeah, same. I can
I
watch Ultron
appreciate
way
what
more.
it was trying to do.
Yeah.
But a lot of people didn't like that Ultron wasn't as dark as like they made him up to be.
Oh, that first trailer was dope.
Oh my gosh, the trailers for Age of Ultron were probably like
They're some of the
they
best
were
Marvel
some of the
trailers.
best Marvel trailers. Yeah, like they're not the best. I really wanted to say they're the best, but they've been
Yeah, no,
outdone
but
since then.
you forgot there's a Black Panther trailer.
Dude, number one right there.
Yeah.
But like, I really liked the route they went with Age of Ultron. I didn't like how they kind of just threw you into the movie. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like they were totally aware that like all the characters were kind of just separated in Phase 2, and so they were just like, they're all together again.
I do appreciate too how like is the fan base kind of craps on Ultron, but the movies don't. Like there's a lot of callbacks, especially in like Endgame to Ultron, which I thought was cool.
Well, I don't feel like Marvel forgot about the movie. I just
No.
feel like as a whole, audiences wanted to try and forget it because they were just underwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but like it's not as bad as people say it is. Like, yeah,
No.
it's not great, but like a lot of Marvel movies just they're not great. They're good, but they're not great. So
Yeah. And he was a solid villain, which is if you're a solid villain in the MCU, you're better than a lot of the villains in the MCU. Let's be honest.
Villains are like typically super generic. But hey, the film had it got to introduce Vision.
Yeah, that was a dope reveal. Like when he's like, "Let's get going," holds up the hammer, and you're just
Oh
like,
yeah,
"What?"
my theater just like straight up was like, oh.
Yeah, like whoa. And then we killed somebody in the MCU in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
What a
whatever.
joke. I mean, honestly, probably my least favorite part of the movie. Like, out of everyone who needed to die, we're gonna sacrifice a new player.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of underwhelming. And what is up with Joss Whedon and
Making everything
like
a joke.
like okay, we're getting a little off topic here, but you've seen the Joss Whedon Justice League, correct?
The Justice League, I'm familiar.
Yeah, the Justice League.
I'm familiar.
He pulls the same sexist thing in both Age of Ultron and Justice League,
Yeah.
where in Age of Ultron he does it with Bruce Banner and Black Widow, and then in Justice League he does it with the Flash and Wonder Woman, and it's just I don't know if it's for giggles, but like you're watching,
It
you
just
get a little
doesn't.
you get a little uncomfortable. You're like, what was the
Yeah,
point of
it just
this?
doesn't rub off well.
No, especially now, like it really rubs off even worse.
Yeah. So that movie's in the past. It's time to talk about Ant-Man.
Oh,
What a refreshing movie after
you know what?
such a
It
big
wasn't.
movie. We went down to, no pun intended, smaller scale. I think
You
it
know
worked.
what? Not as bad as everyone thought it was gonna be. Like
I
it was
thought it was
decent.
solid. I
I
liked
liked
it.
it. I a lot of people compare it to Guardians. I'm like, don't compare this to
What? You
Guardians. Like
can't compare it to
Guardians is
Guardians.
so much better, but like it had that same like it was definitely felt more like a comedy. It was like Ant-Man. I feel like got to do its own thing where a lot of MCU movies have not.
Yeah,
Like
like all of them are like really got to contribute something, but I feel like Ant-Man just like kind of stayed in its lane, was like a true solo movie, and I think it works like that. And I love Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. really awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, this is another one of those movies that really took advantage of being in IMAX. Like I saw this in IMAX, and it was really cool when they shrunk down, and then it
Hmm.
went to IMAX format. It was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't tell, I'm a huge IMAX fan. So like these
Oh,
MCU
the
movies
audience
taking
knows,
advantage,
Anthony.
these MCU movies taking advantage was like just amazing.
Yeah, and perfect setup to introduce him right before he appears in Civil War, which is arguably another S tier Marvel movie.
You know, dude, moving into Phase 3, like I don't feel like there was any better way you could have started it. Like Civil War was just great. It really like
It's next level.
it took like it actually responded to Age of Ultron and like set up consequences from that, and also like it significantly impacted the MCU at that point.
Yeah, I mean everybody's like, oh, it's Captain America 3, but I mean like I like to refer to it as Avengers 2.5. If I'm being honest with you.
I mean, it's like it's Avengers 2.5, but
Right.
it's definitely
It's a
Captain
Captain
America
America film.
3,
Yeah.
but it's definitely like it has elements of a second and a half Avengers
Yeah.
movie. Like you
Action's
have like
great.
the whole Avengers team just sitting in there.
Yeah, action's great, and we got not one but two great introductions to amazing MCU characters in Spider-Man and Black Panther. I loved how they treated those characters and introduced them, and just the way we also like this was like the Russo brothers. We saw them like with Captain America just one, but this was the first time we saw them really like expand. And this is like Kevin Feige has said, like this was kind of like their test to see if they could handle Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, and I think they nailed it out, knocked it out
No,
of the
dude,
park.
it was insane because they announced them as the directors for the next Avengers movie like weeks before Civil War premiered, and everyone was just like, "What? The Captain America directors are going to direct Avengers now,
Yeah,
and
we're
not
like,
one but two of them?"
yeah.
Like,
I mean, we were like, I mean, Winter Soldier was good, but like those are Avengers are completely different types of movies. But then after we saw Civil War, we were like, hell yeah, Russo brothers for life.
right after seeing Civil War, you're just like, "This is." These guys know what they're doing with these characters. They know how to juggle multiple characters.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
like you were talking about Black Panther and Spider-Man getting introduced, like after seeing their reveals, you were so hyped for their solo movies. Like
Yeah,
it wasn't even funny. And let's talk about that airport battle scene.
Chef's Kiss, amazing,
One of the greatest 16 minutes of cinematic history.
for sure.
I also really enjoyed the ending. I like the fact that the movie ends with the Avengers split up. And
Oh
I
yeah,
like that
it's lasting consequences.
Zemo's the only one that won.
Yeah,
He did what he went out to do. He broke up the Avengers.
for sure. And we see like that those are lasting consequences within the MCU, which I like.
Oh yeah, I always love when things happen and like they're permanent things and they impact other movies.
Yeah,
And then moving into, I believe, the next movie that year was Doctor Strange.
yeah. So
That one was a banger.
didn't really have anything to do with Civil War, but another solo movie. Yeah, I this movie is trippy. It is cool. We saw this in IMAX, right?
Absolutely, yeah, we
Yeah, this was
absolutely saw
crazy.
this in IMAX. I think this was your first one that me and you went to see
Yeah,
in IMAX, and because I'm like, nah, you can't see this in regular. Like, we got to
right.
see this in IMAX 3D. Like, not
Yeah,
even just IMAX, IMAX
IMAX 3D.
3D.
It was trippy.
And we walked out of that, we're like,
Whoa.
almost Inception levels, almost.
Yeah, I mean, definitely took a lot of inspiration from Inception with like the kaleidoscopy stuff that they were doing, and introduced the last Infinity Stone we see before the last one is in Infinity War, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Which was cool. Benedict Cumberbatch is a great Doctor Strange. The movie plays a lot like Iron Man, but magic, which I think is cool because they end up setting up that dynamic between Doctor Strange and Iron Man in Infinity War, which I thought was a cool setup.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed the movie, and yeah, that it definitely it feels like a magical version of Iron Man.
Yeah.
But like, I also really enjoyed the ending. The way he defeated
Oh,
the big boss, like, was just
Dormammu.
great.
Yeah, it's fun.
And you know, it's definitely like it made money, but it's definitely on the lower end of the MCU, and I feel like it
It
deserves to be
deserves more.
higher.
Yeah.
Right, like it only made like 600 million, and like it only made 150 domestically, which isn't really good.
Like I
But
think maybe not a lot of people were too excited about Doctor Strange. Not a lot of people saw Doctor Strange, but once they like saw him in the Avengers movies, I think he got a lot more appreciation, and I'm pretty sure his next movie's gonna knock it out of the park.
I think his next movie is going to kick out of the park because of other additions.
Well, yeah, but Doctor Strange, you got to give him some credit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's a great character. I think the next movie though, you didn't
Oh,
like.
yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah, I love how you got excited there for a second. No,
yeah. I
no,
thought it
this
was
is the
one
one
movie,
that
and then
you
you're right.
didn't.
Yeah,
Nah, no, this is the movie that you didn't like.
this is where I go against the grain
Guardians.
with a lot of the MCU fans.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. My boy here hates it. Okay, hate's a strong word.
Hate's a
He
strong word.
dislikes it.
Yeah, I saw it once. I'll watch it again if I have to show it to somebody. But other than that, I can watch the bomb clip on YouTube where Rocket's explaining it to Baby Groot, and I'll call it a day.
All right, so going into this one, I feel like we really need to dive deep in this. What did you not like about this movie?
I think the plot and this story, I was like, why? Like, I didn't really care. And it to me, like, it was funny in some parts, but nowhere near as funny as the first one. Um,
See, now did it have to come down to the fact that this wasn't a surprise? Like,
that too, like, because I now had expectations for these guys. As before, the bar was like non-existent, so I was like, whatever, I'm gonna enjoy it, and it blew me away. But this one, I was like, I thought the Guardians one was amazing, so Guardians 2 better be amazing, and Guardians 2 wasn't amazing, so I was like, oh, yeah,
see, now for me, like, and I think this is funny because for me, I'm like sitting here like, it's not Guardians 1, but like, I enjoyed it. I really liked the fact that like he got to meet his dad and that his dad was a dick.
yeah,
Like, and he got to beat his dad up as Pac-Man. Like, come on, man, that's all I wanted.
yeah. I mean, like, there's some good stuff in this movie, but again, also, I just don't feel like it doesn't really contribute a whole lot to the overall canon.
No, and I feel like I think it had the advantage of being that. I mean,
True.
timeline wise, this took place like 6 months after Guardians 1, and so the MCU was years ahead of it, and so
Right.
it kind of got to explore the same characters from Guardians 1. Like, they hadn't grown up because there really wasn't a big time difference.
Yeah. Groot went from stick to baby Groot real quick.
Hey man, Baby Groot, best part of the movie.
Yeah.
Outside of Rocket. Rocket was pretty great in that movie too.
True.
But one thing I really liked about Guardians 2 is that like its soundtrack was pretty good too.
Oh, I mean, the Guardians soundtrack's always amazing.
And again, another example of IMAX, but this movie was a bomber in IMAX.
Oh, yeah. I could tell from the trailer that it was going to be.
Now we'll head into something that you like a little more: Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Not the best Spider-Man movie. I'll be the first one to say it, and I'll stand on that hill against the MCU fans. But solid Spider-Man movie. One of the I like this is a better villain than most MCU movies. I thought Vulture was really solid, and that twist took me by surprise. I was like, oh damn.
Oh yeah, dude, I think my jaw dropped when I was like,
I was like, what? um, but yeah, it was a really cool way and different approach to Spider-Man. We skipped the Uncle Ben stuff, kind of drop him in, play more of the teenage role. We got more of that relationship between him and Iron Man, which some people complain that Spider-Man's not Spider-Man and he's more Iron Man Jr., which I see. I can see that argument. I'm willing to overlook the argument because these are still fun movies.
right. I think he is such a like. I feel like I like the interpretation so much. I'm willing to overlook the fact that yeah, they definitely set him up as like Iron Man 2.0.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like after Spider-Man 3, Amazing
Yeah,
Spider-Man
we've
2,
seen the
like
regular
this was
Spider-Man gig
such
already.
yeah, this was such a step up from it that I'm like, I'll go with it. Like this is so much better. And I really like the scene after the bridge where Iron Man's like, if you can't live without the suit, then you don't deserve it. And I'm like, ooh,
Yep. Which was a
like,
lesson he had to learn in Iron Man 3.
right. And I really like the scene where, like, he's just gotten his ass handed to him and he's trying to lift the concrete off of
Oh,
him. And,
yeah.
like, he's really struggling and, like, he's having to learn this stuff. And, like, I think a lot of people overlook these things. Like they just see, oh, it's Spider-Man with Iron Man mentoring him, and Iron Man takes over the whole movie. But I feel like Iron Man's there to teach him valuable lessons because
Yeah,
he's
he's the
such a
mentor
young
figure. Yeah.
right. He's such a young character in the MCU. Like I felt like Iron Man was the perfect person to kind of lead him on this journey.
Yeah, and then the ending is really fun. We get some cool suit teasers, and he makes the right character decision. He's like, nah, I'm not gonna be an Avenger. I'm gonna be Spider-Man, and I thought that was really cool.
I was honestly shocked. I really didn't see it going that way.
I know, right?
This one for me though, IMAX wise, I don't believe there was any IMAX footage in this one, and
Could have to do with the Sony deal, maybe.
right, and so like it was weird, but I'm like, all right, I'll give it a pass. This isn't by Marvel Studios, it's by Sony. So,
Yeah.
and then the next movie I believe was Thor Ragnarok.
Oh yes.
All right,
What a treat.
let's not even jump into the movie yet. Do you remember when the teaser trailer came out? Oh my gosh, the internet went nuts.
That was he's a friend from work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. I like this movie was so hyped. Like it was insane. Everyone in school was talking about it
Right.
like
And it was just so different because we brought in Taika Waititi, very different indie filmmaker with lots of more comedic tones, and just spun the character on its head.
I think a lot of people were concerned. They're like, this is not what we expect from Thor, but like at the same time, like, what do you want? You want another sequel to Dark World? Like
Exactly. Thor was in very dire need of an upgrade, and this was a very good upgrade.
and I think that Chris Hemsworth was pretty much getting done with the role. Like
He
I
wanted
felt
more out of it. I could
right. I
feel.
felt like he would have totally walked away from Marvel if Ragnarok hadn't happened.
Right,
Like he would
and
have been like, I'm gonna complete my contract, complete the Avengers movies, and I'm done as well.
yeah, but I think bringing on Taika Waititi, they share that same background. They seem to have a really good relationship, and just it brings that new energy to Thor that Chris Hemsworth really wanted, which allowed him to push on with the way they were taking the character in Infinity War and Endgame, and then even come back and do another Thor, which nobody really saw coming.
I mean, for me, what Thor Ragnarok is, and I know some people might not agree with me, but this to me is like it really is the start of a trilogy.
I could see it.
Like
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I
Thor
see what you're saying.
Ragnarok leads directly into Infinity War, and Infinity War leads directly to Endgame. So for me, this is like the ultimate trilogy start
Not
because you
only for
end with
Thor,
them
but
on the ship.
little bit Hulk too.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for me, like it was so cool seeing Hulk back because we hadn't seen him since Age of Ultron. We didn't
Right.
know where he'd gone, and so it was really cool to do that. Jeff Goldblum was great in it.
Yeah. And then we also
Uh,
got other cool characters. We got
Korg,
Valkyrie and Korg.
Korg, Korg,
Korg.
Korg.
100%. Love that.
I'm
Love
a
that.
rock.
Love that it's the director. Taika does an amazing job as Korg.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And the soundtrack was also just great for the movie.
yeah, it was really like space pop, weird synth vibes.
Right, and me and you went and saw this in IMAX, and they had the arena scene in IMAX, and seeing the lightning come down with the extra footage at the top was
Oh yeah.
just. I mean, for me, that was like the arena and the end were just like the most cinematic, like amazing scenes to see in IMAX, and it was so cool to have that experience.
Yeah, and I got to touch on my boy Loki. Got some nice growth in this movie as well too. Especially like that elevator scene. Crazy stuff for his character, man.
Nah, dude, my favorite actor, whole movie, not even joking, Matt Damon.
Oh yeah, can't forget Matt Damon.
Matt Damon was
Played a
great.
vital part in that movie.
Dude, the movie wouldn't be the same without Matt Damon.
Completely different film.
I haven't seen as much Matt Damon as I haven't since Once Upon a Deadpool.
Oh yeah.
All right, moving into 2018.
We got a big one.
I believe it jumped straight to Infinity War. Oh no,
No,
Black
you're missing
Panther. Yeah, I was
you're missing
missing.
the Best Picture nominee, dude.
Right, I forgot that came out like in February.
Thank
You
God it
know
came out in
what?
February.
The trailer
Sprinted
for
the
Black
marathon.
Panther was outstanding.
The official trailer. The teaser was
Right.
not as good.
Teaser trailer was okay,
Yeah,
but the
the official
official trailer is like it's trailer
the way it's cut,
goodiness.
and the
Oh my
music,
gosh.
amazing.
Yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's a
The
solid film. I mean, I think it's a little overhyped, but it's still a really good movie.
It's definitely one that I fell asleep through once because I saw it at 11 p.m.
Oh,
But yeah, for me, it's definitely one of the better MCU movies. It definitely pulls some comparisons to Lion King, but
yeah.
like overall, my biggest issue with the movie is that what the hell is up with the VFX in this movie?
Oh, they ran out of CGI budget at the end, for sure.
Like it's like
It was so good until the end.
right, the movie's beautiful, everything looks great, and then like it's like they ran out of budget
Yeah.
in the last 10 minutes, and
They
it
rewinded
looks
back to
so
Spider
bad.
Man 3, dude.
Yeah, dude, it looks bad. Like it's probably one of the biggest examples of bad VFX in a giant like $250 million movie.
Yeah. But I remember, like, we were talking about this when we saw it. Like, the pacing was kind of insane. Like, we were like, whoa, it's already at the end. Like, it was just going.
Right, yeah. I remember it was right after he fell off the cliff, and I'm like, wait a second. Wait,
Yeah.
how far in? I looked at the clock real fast. I realized we're like an hour and 48. I'm like, there's only 30 minutes left. What?
Yeah. Like,
I mean,
solid.
it's definitely a movie that captivated me so well that I didn't even realize that the time had gone by.
Right. Like, I was just in.
And speaking of time just going by, Infinity War definitely did that as well.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot going on in that movie.
Infinity War to me, I mean, I know that Infinity War and Endgame are the same movie, but if I really have to compare and contrast the two,
They're different
I like
movies.
Infinity War more.
I don't know. It's like it's like a coin cost for me every time. But
Like
this was,
they're super similar, like in how much I like them, but I feel like Infinity War had to do a lot more of the heavy lifting.
yeah,
Like it without Infinity War, you don't get Endgame, and if Infinity War had been as good, like Endgame wouldn't have been able to do what it did.
right. And this was the first movie I feel like I've ever seen, and we saw this first showing, and that crowd experience. I had never had a better crowd experience up until that point than in this movie.
Dude, we had the best audience reaction I've ever had in any movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, Endgame's reactions were great,
Right.
but in our showing
When
of
Thor
Infinity
landed in
War,
Wakanda, I was ready to climb Mount Everest.
dude, we're not even talking about the same part yet. That one was great. I'm talking about the lady when they got dusted, and she went, "Well, I
Oh,
guess we're not getting a Black Panther too," and me and you just
yeah.
started busting up laughing.
There were so many. Or, like, dude, when Iron Man got stabbed, the entire theater was like,
Oh yeah, you just heard the gasp go across the auditorium. Just
yeah,
like it
I
was.
was like, damn, they did that.
I was sold. I'm like, oh, this is it. And I wasn't ready for it
And I
either.
was
I'm like,
like,
oh
he's
my
going,
god,
man.
yeah. I mean, it. And that one, Infinity War got to have that cool marketing ploy where they released a movie a week early,
Yeah,
and like getting to see it at the same time as everyone was super cool. And I saw Infinity War and Endgame both 3 times opening weekend. Um, Infinity War is also like I really like the way that they handled juggling all the characters. I like
yes,
how each of them kind of got introduced very similarly to the last we saw them outside of the Guardians, but like the Guardians got to mature between Guardians 2 and Infinity War.
right. And I think that the teams that they choose to like separate them in are really cool and work together really well.
Right, and I think the pacing's just absolutely brilliant. And on top of that, like the opening to Infinity War is just amazing.
Oh, such a cool scene. Rip my boy Loki.
Like I
It
really
sets up
had no
Thanos so well.
idea. I had no idea how they were going to start Infinity War. And then when you saw it, you're just like, that's so clever and it's
Yeah.
so good that. But
It.
then, okay, so we're gonna get to like a side discussion here. What's your feelings on the 4K Blu-ray of this movie?
Well, I don't have the best viewing setup, mind you,
But like,
recently, but
yeah,
I'm. Oh, I know what you're talking about. The lack of IMAX.
the lack of IMAX. Like,
Yeah, it sucks.
I try and deal with the fact that this movie is super cropped. But then like, you're actually missing a significant detail in the non IMAX version of this movie. Like when Doctor Strange shows up after Hulk has landed, and he says congratulations. On the Blu-ray release and the regular theater release, it makes absolutely no sense because the ring is actually out of the shot. So only in the IMAX version did it make sense, and I'm just sitting there like, "Where's the ring?" And I'm like, "Oh, it wasn't in the shot."
Yeah, I mean, thank God, like we actually got that experience of seeing it, so we like know. But like to the average Joe, they don't know what they're missing, right?
See, but I feel like if we hadn't experienced it in IMAX, I feel like I'd be sitting here like I did for Blade Runner 2049, where I'm sitting here like I regret it.
Yeah.
And especially like I feel like it's just a bad habit we're getting into in like just Hollywood in general. We're spending all this money, we're filming movies in IMAX now, and the only person who's releasing their footage of it is Nolan.
Which I'm all for, man.
Yeah, but like it sucks. Like there's a whole nother version that people haven't seen of Infinity War and
Did
Endgame.
did Mission 6?
Mission
6?
Impossible 6 also used
It
it.
had it, right?
Tron Legacy, so another Disney release, had some. But outside of those examples, like
Hmm.
not a lot of movies take advantage of it.
Yeah.
You could actually watch Spider-Man Far From Home on like I think Fandango now on a Sony TV, and you can get the
Whoa.
IMAX footage. So you're paying like $3,000, but you can watch it in IMAX. Technically, IMAX.
Hell yeah.
Outside of IMAX, though, Infinity War is great. The next movie, not so great compared to Infinity War.
I mean, was it gonna be though?
Come on, man. I just wanted to see the van again.
Yeah.
So thankfully they showed us the van again. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a solid movie. I mean, it's kind of in that. It's not as bad as Guardians 2 for me, but it's in that same category.
For me, it's in such a weird place. Like, not only did you release Ant-Man after an Avengers movie the first time, but you released the second Ant-Man after an Avengers movie again.
A way bigger Avengers movie.
Yeah, a way bigger Avengers movie. And, like, you're watching the movie knowing that everyone's been dusted. And
Yeah.
you're like, this is kind of weird.
You're
And then
really
the
just
ending,
yeah, you're just trying to see until the ending, and then it makes sense.
and then you're like, oh, yep, there we go. They're dusted.
Yep.
I thought the humor was great in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh yeah.
I like
It's
the
always great.
relationship between Scott and his daughter.
Yeah. It'll be
But
interesting to see how
outside of
that
that, I
goes.
feel like it's fairly generic. It's a nice
Yeah.
comedy that sits in the MCU, and it was a nice palate cleanse after Infinity War. It was a nice breather.
Yeah, and I mean it does set up the quantum realm, which was very important in Endgame.
Right, and I don't think, for me, I didn't realize how big of a role that was going to play until I was like, wait a second, they could totally use this in Endgame.
Yeah, because I was like, Time Stone's gone. I don't know what they're gonna do until I was like, oh, quantum realm makes sense.
You know, it was weird because when Ant-Man was coming out, everyone was sitting around like, we're waiting for the next Avengers movie. Like, when's the trailer coming out? What's it going to be titled? And I loved the way Marvel did it because we didn't get told at the end of Ant-Man. We kept waiting and we kept getting Captain Marvel trailers and stuff. And like, finally, like in December, I remember waking up at 5 in the morning and just seeing it didn't even have the title. It just said Marvel's
Oh yeah,
Avengers official trailer.
yeah. I was like,
And so
what?
I'm like, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm not gonna read the comments. So you watch the whole trailer, and then the title gets revealed, and I was just like, for the age of internet, keeping something like that a secret
Right.
was like, I don't even know how they were able to do it.
There's like that huge thing going on where everyone was trying to guess it, and they were like, they said it in Infinity War, and I'm like, dude, it's gotta be Endgame. Like we didn't know. We were like, we don't know if it was gonna be Endgame, but we both agreed like that was gonna be a cool title if they called it Endgame.
We both agreed that Endgame to us felt the most fitting, and there were other options of like Final Hour,
Yeah, and
and
like
we
they
really
came out
didn't
and
like
like they
that.
said it's not Endgame, so we're like, damn, that would have been a cool title. But then it was Endgame, and then we're like,
I
yeah,
think it was funny because when they said it's not Endgame, we both kind of sat there and went, "Well, whatever they put out is gonna be worse."
yeah,
And then when the trailer came out, we're like, "Oh, they did go with Endgame. Thank God."
yeah. But moving on to the one right before Endgame, yikes.
Eh, it's fine. You know what? One thing I'll give that movie credit is the fact that you have a de-aged Samuel Jackson, and it's not bad.
Oh yeah, it was
Like
really good.
I think the only issue I really had with Captain Marvel, like, yeah, story wise, it's like it's fairly generic. But like the thing that really bugged me about it was the fact that she really wasn't all that powerful, but the moment she got superpowers, she just absolutely whooped
She's
ass.
OP.
And yeah, and I didn't really understand how she went from being like she was literally getting her ass handed to her the rest of the movie, and
It's
then all
it's
of a
it's like
sudden,
Ray.
see, but we discussed this in the last episode. Like there were reasons I felt that
Right.
Rey was able to
But
overpower
they were
Kylo
spring.
Ren.
Yeah, yeah, true. But Captain Marvel, they just comes out of nowhere, and she's like, yeah, and I just
And I felt that the song didn't fit it either. Like I'm like, really?
yeah, and just for me, like Brie Larson, like I love Brie Larson as an actress. She's a really great actress, but just feel like either just her portrayal of Captain Marvel or the writing for the characters just doesn't do it for me.
Well, but there was this whole theory that she's gonna play a vital part in Endgame. But after seeing her just be how she was at the end of Captain Marvel, I'm like, you can't have her in it.
Right. I liked how
She
they
is
used her in
too
moderation for Endgame. I
like
appreciated
she's
that.
too powerful, and I understand for people that liked her, but like, how do you deal with a character like that? Like,
Right.
she's the only one like that. And so, like, it really was just like there was no other choice. You had to write her out.
Yeah, like I mean, we're gonna talk about this for next anyway, but I do appreciate in Endgame when she's like about to destroy Thanos and he just takes the Power Stone and says nah and just takes
I
her
mean,
out.
it's just it was. I mean, I think even for audience members, it was crazy because like the reason she was in the movie was because she was ultra powerful, and I thought, oh, she's gonna just come in here and just like show him who's boss, and he just
He said
smacked her.
nah.
Yeah,
I was
like
like,
all the way
and it was
across.
really cool too because before like we saw like you get the gauntlet, you just keep the gauntlet intact, but then like he showed like no, you can just still take one out and just use it by itself, and I thought that was a cool aspect too.
I think it was definitely yeah, it was definitely cool. And speaking of Endgame, do you remember when the runtime was announced for that movie, where me and you were arguing on what we thought the runtime was going to be? You were like 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm like 3 hours, totally. Like, and then they're like, it's 3 hours and one. I'm like, oh, look at that! I told you.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense. If it had to be for a movie, it was for this movie, right?
I love how the directors had to actually. I mean, it just shows in the Netflix day and age, people really they will see a 3 hour movie, but they are skeptical of a 3 hour runtime still. Like
Yeah.
they're like, if I can't watch it on my couch, they're like, eh.
Yeah, I definitely think you have to earn it, and for how anticipated Endgame was, definitely earned the 3 hour runtime.
I mean, to this day, I've still heard people that are like, I haven't seen it. It's 3 hours, and I don't have 3 hours in my life.
Yeah, you do. Go watch it.
And I hear the same excuse
Now
for
it's
the
on Disney
new,
Plus. Go hit pause, come back.
and I hear the same excuse nowadays for Zack Snyder's Justice League, where they're like, I don't have 4 hours, and I'm like, yeah, but the prologue, like the epilogue's 30 minutes of that 4 hours, so it's really like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could break up Endgame. Like, as soon as they go back in time, you could just hit pause and be like, alright,
I mean, I find it ironic that the highest-grossing movies of all time
are
all sit
really
around the
long.
3 hour. Yeah, they all sit around the 3 hour runtime.
Yeah. And it has been proven where if you forcefully shorten your movie in hopes of selling more tickets because more people will see it, that doesn't work if you still make a crappy movie.
I mean, hey
Hashtag
man,
Justice League.
a crappy movie is just a crappy movie. Like,
Yeah.
period. The end. I think what's so enjoyable looking at Justice League's box office performance is just the fact that Warner Brothers wanted a 2 hour runtime and they sacrificed quality for it, and then it still at 2 hours could not sell more tickets.
Amazing.
Like it was like it made less than Thor Ragnarok. Like this is Justice League we're talking about. It was
It's supposed to
nuts.
be the big one. But going back to Endgame, culmination of all those years, so many films, and had to stick the landing. Lots of pressure on it. You know, so many things have been teased, and it hit home. It got it. It did it.
Right, and I feel like I mean after watching Infinity War, I'll be honest, I wasn't even worried they couldn't pull the landing.
Oh no, I totally knew they were gonna do it.
Like I'm like if they can't pull the landing, I will actually be in shock. And then sitting down in that theater, like
I cried
the
twice.
audience was there with you. Like they were experiencing what you were experiencing. You could like feel that energy in the room.
I cried once in Infinity War. I cried twice Endgame. They got double out of me.
I I started tearing up a little in Infinity War, and then I almost bawled during Endgame. Like I was on the verge.
Yeah,
Like it was super emotional.
I know because we've just been with these characters for so long, and it's coming to an end.
And then there's like that deleted scene with them all kneeling, and I'm really glad they dropped it because I felt like it
Yeah,
didn't serve the story.
I've seen lots of people on like Twitter and stuff be like, "This is stupid. Like this is one of the greatest scenes. They need to keep it in." I'm like, no, I'm glad they kept it out. It was kind of a weird scene, to be honest.
Like I don't get me wrong, I understand its intention, but like I feel like it would have pulled away from the moment.
Yeah,
And so like yeah, Tony Stark's death in the MCU, like I feel like we're gonna feel it for a while. Like
yeah. I mean, definitely feel in the next film.
and like I feel like it's something that we're not going to experience much with Steve Rogers because he didn't die. Like
Die. Yeah,
he just kind of vanished if as far as everyone else knows.
yeah. I mean, like in a way, the ending of Tony Stark was dealt with in Spider-Man: Far From Home, and then the ending of Captain America was dealt with in Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I feel like they both get touched on, and like we talked about earlier with like having consequences. Endgame definitely still has a lot of consequences in the MCU where it's these characters dying, or it was the blip as they call it.
I love how many times we're gonna change what we're gonna call it.
Yeah.
Like the MCU hasn't like they keep changing what they want to call it. And
What?
when we talk about openers, like remember how we were talking about the Infinity War opener? Well, Endgame did the exact same thing
Oh yeah,
again, where you're
I called
just
the opening 100%. I was like, dude, they got to show
I
Hawkeye.
didn't. That was actually like it's so intense, and then
Yeah.
you're like, and then you jump from that opener and you move straight into the first 20 minutes and they just kill Thanos and you're like sitting there like what the hell is the rest of the movie going
Yeah.
to be
Because
about?
it's like the trailer was almost like all towards that, like that first 20 minutes in a way.
It's definitely a movie that we can now walk into and you can watch the trailers and you know nothing about the movie because
Yeah,
they
half the
did
trailer was
such
just
a
like
good
old
job.
footage of they're like, yo, it's all been building up to this, and then you're like, oh, I don't know what the heck this movie's about.
And in my opinion, Disney like picks and chooses what they want to have like trailer wise where like some movies they want to reveal a lot and some movies they reveal borderline nothing and like they treat some Marvel and some Star Wars movies like that where but then other Marvel movies and other Star Wars movies they don't, so it's definitely weird.
Yeah, they might do it because like if they don't feel like there's a big enough following, they just got to throw everything they got at the trailer and just hope people will get excited about it. So that might be it. But I really like their approach for the Endgame trailer.
Yeah, honestly, so for me, how I felt with the Endgame trailers, I felt like they treated the Endgame trailers and the Infinity War trailers, granted a little less on Infinity War, but I feel like there was less to be able to spoil. Where like Endgame, it was a big deal, but like,
Yeah.
to me, they reflect a lot on the sequel trilogy. Like every single one of the trailers did not reveal too much about the movie. Like they were really there to just hype you up, but they expected you to sit down in the theater regardless if the trailers sucked or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on to the next film after, we bawled our eyes a few times, saw it a few more times, cried some more,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Far From Home.
I think Far From Home is like the perfect. Well, Endgame is the conclusion to the Infinity Saga, and I feel like, and that's like the last chapter. I think Far From Home is a really nice epilogue, if you will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for me, I really enjoyed Far From Home. I think it's better than Homecoming.
Yeah, Sam.
I really I really liked Mysterio.
Oh yeah, my boy Jake Gyllenhaal doing wonders in the MCU.
I liked that they brought Nick Fury back.
Yeah, it was just nice to. It really tied it more into this whole Avengers world versus the first one where they kept it nice and contained, which I felt like they had to do. But now he's like kind of an Avenger now, and they got a bigger things to accomplish.
Right, and the the Mysterio like dream vision
Oh, so
was
cool.
honestly one of the coolest sequences in the whole film. Like it was trippy, like it was just so good, and like again, speaking of IMAX again, because we really didn't speak about it in Endgame because it's just oblivious. It was filmed in IMAX, like it looked amazing, and any version that's not the IMAX version is inferior, just by 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 initial. But yeah, the IMAX sequences they chose for Far From Home really like they chose them really well because they only chose I think a few sequences, but that one like still stands out in my mind today where I was like that was awesome.
Yeah, and I do like in Far From Home, like how they treated it more as like a sequel, talking about what happened after Endgame versus setting up Phase 4. Like they focus more on the Infinity Saga versus setting up future movies, like as opposed to like kind of like an Ultron where it like kind of focused on setting up more stuff, which I liked how it kind of stayed in its lane, and we got the Phase 4 stuff later.
Right, and I definitely felt like that was where a lot of people thought Far From Home was going to be. Like they thought it was going to be a setup for Phase 4 because Endgame hadn't set up Phase 4, but like it like you said, it really felt like an epilogue. Like it was just the last chapter to finish the book.
Right.
And I really appreciate the fact that it wasn't just a Phase 4 setup because I think it would have been insulting. Like this came out like 2 months
Yeah.
after Endgame. Like I didn't want to know anything about Phase 4. Like for me, I needed Phase 3 to have a nice close to it. Like I wanted to be able to, because for me, I'm still to this day, I'm slightly concerned of can Marvel keep this up beyond Phase 4 into Phase 5, Phase 6. Like for me, I wanted to be able to sit there and go, all right, the first three phases are their own set of movies, and
Right.
like if you ever go back and rewatch them, like
You got the
you go to
Infinity Saga.
right, and you go to Far From Home, and then it's over. Like
Right.
that's the
Eh,
end of let's say book one, and then
I
the
think you
next
could.
book
I think you could
starts.
squeeze Black Widow in there, but yeah,
Eh,
I think
yeah,
it was meant to in a way. Anyways,
you know what? I don't know why it's even in Phase 4. It should have been in Phase 3.
yeah, I don't know why it exists anyway, but
But
yeah,
that's for a whole nother
yeah,
discussion.
the Black Widow episode coming sometime in the future. Yeah, I mean, it's really come to a conclusion after this, and they didn't like shove down all this like future teasers down your throat, other than the big thing at the end where you're like, everybody knows it's Peter Parker, which I think setting up a future Spider-Man movie I think was okay, but you didn't have to set up like all these other shows and movies, which I think they did well.
Well, I think obviously it was going to set up another Spider-Man movie. Like Sony's invest in the MCU for their benefit.
Right.
Outside of that, like you could tell with what happened right after that, Sony's only interest in the MCU is money.
Yep.
Outside of money, they don't care. Like they're not going to split production costs if they have to split revenue. Like for them, it's all about the fact that Spider-Man in the MCU makes them more money than Spider-Man not being in the MCU.
Right.
And they were even willing to risk it. They were willing to release another Spider-Man movie and somehow weirdly chop him out of the MCU.
Oh yeah, that was a whole weird thing that was going on.
And I know that we talked about it a lot. Like how do you move forward with Spider-Man when he's made such a big impact on the MCU? And there was a lot of arguments where Marvel Studios couldn't move forward without Spider-Man. And I think we're starting to see that Marvel Studios can do whatever they want. Like as sad as Chadwick Boseman's passing is, they have now rewritten Black Panther and they're doing a completely different idea for Black Panther too.
Yeah, like they
Like,
got a plan and they're going no matter what.
and they've even stated because back in Phase One they were signing 6, 10 year contracts. Now they're not signing big
Oh
contracts.
yeah, they're doing
You're
like
getting
picture
signed for
deals.
one movie,
Yeah.
and if you want to come back, that's up to you. And if you don't want to come back, we'll figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, I think like there's the whole like pandemic and everything had an effect on that too, and just how we move production moving forward, kind of take it just one step at a time.
Well, right, because now you're sitting in a scenario where we're sitting on movies for, I mean, for the last year, and we're just now finally releasing them, aka Black Widow. Like, it's been done probably since March of 2020, but yet it just recently got released.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we're definitely stepping into a new phase of Marvel. I know we're going to talk about that next in our next episode, but I mean, it's outstanding when you look at how far the MCU got in its 11 years between Iron Man and Endgame.
Yeah, for sure. and just how it's affected the game. Like now we got Sony making their own. They got Venom and Morbius and all these other movies, and then DC's kind of going the whole solo route too. We saw another Wonder Woman movie. We saw Shazam. We got Aquaman. Like they're going hard on the superhero movies too, and even in TV, it's really prevalent now. We got superhero shows out the wazoo. We got Invincible. We got The Boys. They're doing a lot of that on Amazon. They even had some Marvel shows earlier on Netflix. Like everybody's making superhero stuff content now, and I think that's totally indebted to the MCU for doing that.
Right, and I feel like the cinematic universe approach, Marvel started it, and I mean, so many people tried to start their own, and it just failed. Like, no one was able to do it the way Marvel did it. And
hey man, we
I don't
got
know
a
if anything's
solid MonsterVerse going on. Okay.
It was called the Dark Universe, okay?
No, I'm talking about the kaiju MonsterVerse.
Oh, okay, my bad. You're right. We got that going with King of the Monsters being an absolute box office bomb, and Godzilla versus King Kong only being a financial success because, well, it came out during COVID.
If
Godzilla
strong.
versus Kong had come out outside of COVID, it would have been an absolute box office disaster. Tell me wrong.
No, you're right.
But yeah, like we've seen a lot of other cinematic universes pop up in the last few years, and almost every single one of them has either shifted their approach entirely or just died out after one or two films. I mean, just look at the Dark Universe, like I just mentioned.
Yeah.
The Mummy came out, bombed, and that was that. Like, and then Transformers tried to make a universe. I don't remember what it's called, a Hasbro universe, and like The Last Night came out, and they were like, no, we're scrapping that too. Like, everyone's tried it, and no one can copy Marvel's success.
Yeah, I mean, what Marvel did differently is like they really honed in and started and did the dirty work up front with setting up these solo movies leading up to the team up, which was exactly the opposite of what Justice League did. They went straight, tried to cut the corner and go for the team up, and it just did not work out for them.
Well, I think it's more of everyone's trying to play catch up, but like, how do you play catch up when Marvel's like 10 steps ahead?
Right, and they're trying to copy it where you can't copy, you got to do your own thing. And I think DC has kind of learned from that, and they're kind of doing their own thing now and just kind of stepping away from the shared universe, and just making solid, one-offs, if you will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and going the solo route, I mean, I think that's what Marvel's moving into too. And I think there's definitely a benefit to it. I mean, it's way less expensive, and there's other ways to move stories without having ensemble films. And I think we're going to start seeing that, especially with the way COVID's messed with production. Like, I think solo films are going to become way more popular for studios and making these giant, $300 million films. I mean, Bob Iger, while he was still CEO of Disney, straight up said, like, Endgame and Infinity War were expensive, and we don't make movies like this all the time because they're super expensive. It's super hard to get all the cast together. Like, they're really meant to be event films, and like Marvel created the like example of what event films is.
Right.
And we'll talk more about like in our next episode about how things have changed with event films, and I'm actually really excited to have a conversation on that.
Yeah. No, but just to like talk on your point of like how these movies take these actors and, got to align all these schedules, just to show you the kind of impact this kind of filmmaking has had on other franchises. Marvel has stolen Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, from the Mission Impossible universe because of how big Avengers is.
I'm so hurt. Like, I'm absolutely just...
I know.
To this day, I'm actually hurt that he didn't show back up because...
He was so good.
You know what? Forget it. I don't even want to talk about Ghost Protocol. I just want to talk about Rogue Nation and his one line that he had to deliver. I can either approve or deny without the secretary approval.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, maybe after this Hawkeye show and he comes back. Who knows?
I would love that. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us here on Timebreaker Podcast,
and
we'll see you on our next video.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Timebreaker Podcast.
If you did enjoy it, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe and make sure to ring that notification bell for new episodes every Wednesday.
See you next week.